Hello again, once again, we are here back to start with our conferences. As I said before, we have a diverse lineup of different speakers, and this afternoon we will start with our first speakers, which is Ariadna Fon. Ariadna Fon is the founder and CEO of Selfmade. She's also a former Senior Director of Engineering, leading Twitter's machine learning platform and machine learning responsible in New York. Previously, she was Director of Engineering, Watson Data, and AI, leading a large global organization. And she holds a PhD from the Carnegie Mellon University in Language and Information Technology, and she's passionate about building innovative products that delight end users. So, hello, Ariadna. How are you today?
Hi, thanks, Noelia. Thanks for having me. Hi, everyone.
Hello. So I let you start your conference, or it's all yours.
Okay, thanks. It's an honor to be here with all of you today. And I'd like to share some thoughts and best practices related to responsible generative AI. But first, even though Noelia actually did a great job already summarizing my trajectory, I thought it might be helpful to tell you a little bit more about how I work and like what have I done in the past to get to the present. And I would actually like to start with my motto, which is I love people over tech. So I do come from the technical field, but for me this has always been a means to an end, and obviously not the end in its own. And I think hopefully you'll see that throughout. I was born, actually, let me advance my slide. I was born and raised in Barcelona, and I immigrated to the US about 24 or so years ago to do my master's, and later decided to stay for my PhD. And I did both at the School of Computer Science at Carnegie Mellon. Some of you might recognize the picture if you've been there. And even though I actually had studied translation and interpreting as an undergrad, my grad studies were in NLP and AI. And so I switched from humanities to programming after I was 23 years old. And my research and work took me to both Chile and the Mapuche people as well. And actually what I was working on is helping preserve and stimulate the use of Mapudungun, which is their language. And I also spent a year in these are the Mapuche people, as you can see. And I spent a year in Cusco, in actually Peru, also working on Quechua, which is another language that doesn't have a lot of presence online, and that speakers are not, basically they're minority speakers. And my thesis was on working with native speakers to create Quechua Spanish to Spanish machine translation prototype, which again was one of the core components. So amidst a lot of adventure and traveling, I actually managed to get married coming back from Peru. I was still in grad school. And if you fast forward 2 years from that, I was presenting my thesis, as you might be able to see in this picture. And I actually, in this thesis, I think you can see these, that I was pregnant, like with my first baby. It was 7 or 8 months pregnant. I managed to basically defend my thesis before I had my baby, which was nice. But then right after defending the thesis, I joined a startup, and I did several roles at the startup. I started as a computation linguist, but then I wore many hats, such as engineer, like software engineer, user experience designer, team lead. And what actually, I think I got ahead of myself, because this is where Mar comes. Yes, this is my first daughter. Mar was born after just a month in the startup. And my second daughter, Maya, came 2.5 years after. I was still obviously in the startup, working on all these roles that I just mentioned. And basically, it was really fun and a great experience, but we got acquired by IBM, which at the time had just very recently, IBM Watson had Win in Jeopardy. If you know, it's like a sort of quiz. So the computer, IBM Watson, had basically beat the best humans in the world at this quiz, which was a bit of a, milestone for the AI world. And so from a basically professional perspective, I became a design principal during those years. I helped others embrace Lean UX and design thinking. I took a role that was making me, travel a lot and visit teams. This is me going to New York. At the time I lived in Pittsburgh, so I went to New York to also speak at conferences and run workshops around design thinking. So this is something I got very deep into. And then I have to say I was traveling a lot during these times. This is me in a chief of staff role in Japan. I think we flew in for a couple of days, which was really crazy with the jet lag. So it was a very active time. And at first, I have to say, my kids were really hating. This is their phase when I told them I needed to travel again. They were little and they were not very happy. And then I realized that I never quite shared with them what I was doing when I was gone, while I was leaving. They were kids, so I didn't think about explaining it to them. But I kind of took some time to explain what I was doing, how I really loved running workshops with other people and helping all these other people around the world do things. And it's not like they loved it, but I think they understood it, they tolerated it better. They're like, okay, as long as you bring a toy, when you come back, we're okay with it, which I thought was an important moment for me to free myself from guilt and just be able to do my work fully when I was away from them. So this is something that I'm sharing just in case it helps any of you now or in the future. A few years after that, I actually basically joined IBM Research, leading a team that was tasked with democratizing access to quantum computers as well as AI. And this is a quantum computer here that you might have already seen. It's quite famous. And I went back to IBM Watson. I think I went back by accident. Yes. So after that, I went back to IBM Watson, where I led, like Noelia was saying at the beginning, a global organization of over 130 people. And as part of that, I also had to travel, one of my teams was in Japan again, so I had to travel back to Japan. But this time I brought my kids with me. So that was a highlight again of my career, where I could bring them and show them and actually share something really, like this is Sakura, which is the cherry blossom, which was very fortunate. We could see that while we were there. And they were very brave and trying everything and very into the culture. They loved it. So again, it was very nice to be able to, something I would have to do for work almost every other month, which was pretty intense, but I was able to share it with them. So it made it a lot better for me. And this is actually how 7 years into my IBM journey, I was having a great time, but Twitter knocked at my door and I answered. I basically decided that it was going to be good change. So I took an opportunity as a director of engineering, leading the machine learning platform. And this was an organization with several teams across the US. So no more traveling to Japan, which was really good. I actually spent 3.5 years at Twitter, 2 of which were during the pandemic. During that, and actually I was running I created the Responsible ML initiative and elevated it, at the company level. And this allowed me to grow and empower industry-leading ML ethics, transparency, and accountability team that we had a very small team of 2 researchers, and we were able to hire a lot more after making it a company objective. And so for those of you who are not very familiar with responsible ML or responsible AI, this is a good way I'd like to sort of depict it, because you can see all the components that I think constitute responsible AI. Like it's a very interdisciplinary field. It's basically very rich and complex, because there is a lot of components. User experience, I think, is a very, very key one, which we have seen with ChatGPT, how that actually has a very huge impact on how people can use it and relate to it and actually understand it. And so in the future, right now, legislation is like on the thin side, but it's going to obviously grow. In Europe, you have the AI Act coming up. I think in the US, we will also see some regulation. Maybe it's going to take some time, but it's definitely gonna be there. Something else I wanted to share with you, because I was very, I really enjoy doing that. During the pandemic, as I mentioned, it hit very quickly after I joined Twitter. I wasn't able to see people face to face, but what I decided to do is interview a series of women leaders in technology primarily, and do a kind of one-on-one interview where I would ask leadership questions to them. And this is something that if you're interested, happy to share the links. But it really helped me get through the first months of the pandemic. And I think people really appreciated the insights these women had to share. It was really, really great. And I guess overall, Twitter was an amazing ride. For me, it was again 3.5 years until November of last year, when Elon Musk acquired Twitter, and basically 2 days after, my entire org was basically mostly let go, like pretty much all of it. A few people were left, but not many. So Meta team, the responsible AI team, didn't survive either. And so for me, it kind of led me to what's next for me. And you might remember November was literally a month before ChatGPT came out. So I thought I was going to take some time to relax and decompress, but then ChatGPT came out and I was like, okay, so this is both super exciting and somewhat scary. Where is generative AI leading us? And it really gave me a lot of pause, and I had time to dive into it and think about it deeply. And so I asked this to my kids as well, like, how do you imagine the future of humanity in 50 years? And if we're kind of in a live audience, I would actually ask you and wait for your answer. We can't do that right now, so maybe you can tell me later during question session. But essentially, there's two sides. I mean, there's obviously many grays in between, but there is like the people that are thinking of like a doom and gloom sort of pessimistic view. And it really doesn't look good for humans. Like, technology has taken over our lives in very visible ways, like you've seen these pictures. And maybe even worse, we're trapped in this meta space where we're just kind of zombies floating somewhere. Or, maybe it's more like this. It's more of a utopian view where there's flying cars. And I have 2 daughters. So one was like the doom and gloom, and the other was like, we'll have flying cars. And she hadn't seen my slides. And I was like, yes, there you go. Here it is. And so there's definitely the optimists among us that are like, have a brighter view of what the future could be. And so for me, we would be supported and empowered by technology, but not sort of invaded by technology in that future. And even better, actually, we wouldn't see it. It would be seamless. It would be there. It would amplify our capabilities and make us super human in some senses, but it wouldn't need to be there, even visible at all. And so that would be my ideal, actually. In any way, something was very clear to me while I was doing down this thought experiment is like, I felt like I had a responsibility to help shape the future of generative AI, because I had the background, the expertise, the availability, thank you, Elon Musk, to actually create a world that I feel like I want to live in, and my daughters, I want them to live in. And so that brings me to, okay, well, so what's the version of responsible AI for generative AI? And how do we use this incredible technology that we're barely just getting to know, most of us are just barely getting to know, that is in a way that's fair and just for all? We don't want to be really creating further divide between the people that have the resources and the compute and basically lead tech companies and the rest of the world. And so I would say, whenever you're building, if you're a technologist, whenever you're building a feature, or if you're actually a consumer, even then, whenever you're consuming one of these products, I think it's very important for us to pause and ask us, like, is it safe? Is it ethical? Is it aligned with our values? And this is more for technologies. Like, if you're building something, it's always okay to be like, you know what, I really don't want, like, it doesn't feel like this is something I should be doing. It really goes against what I stand for. I think that we need to have those internal conversations and not be afraid of them. And then very importantly, and design and user experience can help us a lot with this, is what could be the unintended consequences of this, or whatever it is that we're building. And then I think last but not least, are we making a responsible use of our resources? As you probably know, like these very large language models take a lot of energy, a lot of just resources in general. And so there is an ethical question there, and sustainability question as well, which we shouldn't forget. And so that's always really good for all of the people like myself making technology to have these things in mind. And I kind of wanted to say, if you are technologists, what kind of future you want to build, because it literally is in your hands. You make choices and take decisions even if they're at the micro level, or micro level, they're just decisions that will impact our future in one way or another. So I think that you need to be asking yourself, what kind of future do you want to shape? And I could end here, but I want to tell you more. And specifically, I want to share that I used for this, like the second part of the presentation, I use all images of women created by Midjourney. And I kind of used a default prompt, and I'll show you in a minute. But what happened the first time, I actually just said, show me a woman in the future where technology is very prominent or something like that. What I would get would be a specific type of women that are hypersexualized, that tend to be white. And so I was not very happy with that for my responsible AI presentation. And this is just more examples of the kinds of images I got. And if I had stopped with my first prompt, this is kind of what the presentation would have looked like. But I didn't want to do that. And so my way of shaping the future, and especially this presentation, was to prompt responsibly. And so basically ask for specific Black women in this case, or everyday normal Latina women, or just very specifically ask for the variety that I wasn't seeing in the initial set of images that I was getting as a result. And I was very purposefully injecting these diversity, what I call diversity words, to get something that was closer to what I wanted to see. Let me see here if I can advance. And so actually, what do you think happens? And I think I skipped, I guess, yeah, it doesn't work with the PDF. But so what happens is when we say something like a nurse, also the default images will come out all being women. And if we wanted something other than that, we would need to be very explicit. It's not like the model cannot do that. It's just that we need to say it. And it happens the same with doctor, and like not surprisingly would get all of, actually in this case, white men, and I want mixed race women doctor, let's just say. So you ask for it, and it's kind of interesting how they all sort of look very similar. That doesn't always happen this way. Lawyer, same thing, although we have a woman in lawyer, so that's great. That just shows the data usually that these models have been trained on. We just put more examples here for your entertainment. And then if you ask for an Olympian basketball athlete, guess what? All Black men. But it so happens the first time I was sharing this presentation, one of my friends who's a co-founder, who is an Olympian basketball athlete, was in the audience. So I thought this would be a great example. And obviously women can do that too. And so what is my maybe takeaway for this part of the presentation is that you, even as users, have the responsibility to basically shape the future and decide if what the model is giving you back is ethical, is acceptable, is responsible or not, and like act appropriately. Just maybe come back and refine your prompt, be much more explicit, things like that. And I'd love to answer any questions you have about that, obviously. And just to basically share with you, okay, so what did I end up doing after? And I ended up deciding to create my company, Alinea. I'm calling it Alinea, and it's a very new company. And we are basically focused on bringing customized large language models, which, Midjourney is an image large language models. Like we're more focused on text large language models. And we want to bring those to businesses in a responsible and safe way. And what does that mean? Well, it means I don't believe in a world where each business needs to retrain their own large language model. That's not sustainable. That is not desirable for the earth and for us. But there are ways to customize large language models with fine tuning. There's ways to align large language models to the values that we want, and customer values as well, and do it in a potentially in a way that's aware of the legislation that's coming, so that we have compliance awareness and all these other great things from the beginning, as opposed to an afterthought. Faster than I wasn't anyone.
Hi, I think that we lost you for the last 30 seconds, Ariadna. So would you mind if you can repeat the last 30 seconds or the last minute? He's gone. She's gone. Okay. We are having a technical issue with Ariadna. She left us. So we will try to sort it out as soon as possible. Wait a minute. Yeah. Streaming technical issues, as always.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, you are back.
I'm so
Happy
sorry.
to
I
see you
don't know when I
again.
got. Yeah, when did I lose you?
I think that like 1 minute ago or something. So, but don't worry. You can start sharing again your presentation. Maybe we were in the slide where you were talking about your company now. So if you don't mind, we can resume it there.
Okay, this thing doesn't show right now for me to share. So let me try again. 1 second. I don't know what happened with my
Sure.
computer. Apologies. Yeah,
Don't worry. That happens every time, right?
sorry. Okay, let's
Not a
see.
problem.
Try to share again. Okay, now I can share. I'll just maximize it. And then I was in the previous slide, right?
Yeah.
Can you see it?
Can you? Yeah. Sure. You were there.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. Okay, I'll just start from the beginning, I guess, on this slide. So just to come back full circle, like what am I doing now? What's next for me? I decided again to basically be part of the creating this future for with generative AI that I want to see. So I decided to become a founder for the first time with a very new startup. It's called Alinea. I have two co-founders. It's very exciting times for sure. And what we've been focusing on is bringing customized large language models to businesses of all types in a responsible and safe way. What does that mean? So first of all, large language models, as you have seen, like Midjourney is an example of it, ChatGPT is another example of it, or GPT-4, GPT 3.5 to be precise, are examples of it. And so we don't believe the world should actually, or all the companies in the world should try to create their own version of that and retrain it fully, because that would take way too much resources from our earth, and that would really not be sustainable. So and also it just would be too expensive for most companies to do that anyway. So I don't think that would happen, but we just believe it shouldn't happen even if they could afford it, because it just wouldn't be good for society and for the environment. And so what we do want to do is we want to provide a path for companies to actually unlock the power and the productivity of generative AI in a way that's responsible and safe. Everything from not having to retrain your whole model, so just working on fine-tuning methods, and then value alignment methods that allow you to align to the values that you care about, which are sometimes country-specific, religion-specific, but also company-specific. So how do you do that in a large language model world as much as possible? And then, as you have seen, how do you do that in a way that also helps you manage the prompts and guide your users so that you're actually if there is any bias in your data or there's bias in the answer, you're able to remediate that on the fly just by asking slightly different prompt, slightly different question to the model. And then last but not least, making that compliance aware, especially in Europe with the AI Act coming up very soon. But I would say across the world, hopefully also not shortly after that, other countries will follow, just because it's just very important to legislate something like this. And so this is the summary of what I'm doing, very high level. If anyone has any questions or any other things about this or any other parts, very happy to share with you. And this is actually my last slide. So thank you very much for the time and the opportunity. I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, Ariadna, very much. It has been a really fulfilling insight of your experience. It's amazing to see all of you have done through these years, so from the academia to large companies and to now being a founder and a CEO of your own company, trying to be responsible and trying to think about that, AI should be agnostic, but it's not, right? So it has been a really, really interesting conference, so thanks first of all for that. I would like to start by answering your question, how do you imagine the future in 50 years? Myself, as an aerospace engineer, I would give the same answer as your child, right? I would imagine flying cars, wherever, right? So this has been a really nice insight. We have some questions indeed, either from myself and also from the public. So if you don't mind, I can start triggering them to you. So the first
Perfect.
one would be with your extensive experience leading AI and software engineering companies and teams. What do you believe are the most critical skills for a leader in this space? Do you think that women has less opportunity than men could have?
Okay. Oh, I feel like these are so many questions in one, because the last question, definitely not. Like, women, of course, have the same, if not more, ability to lead in this space. So absolutely, I mean, if I understood the question right, men don't have more skills, or we absolutely can lead. What we need in terms of skills for leading, it's a really great question that is really changing fast with this, again, generative AI wave, right? Because it's changing everything, and it's also changing how leaders need to lead in some ways. I mean, not in the fundamental ways, but for me, for people in the audience that either are leaders or that want to be leaders, leadership has to come from an authentic place. Like, every person, every leader is going to be different, and that's a good thing. We don't want people to lead like someone else. They need to lead like themselves. So I think it's a journey of introspection and self-awareness, I would say. So knowing who you are, knowing your strengths, knowing basically the areas of improvement. And then something important is to always complement yourself with people that are going to be strong at the areas where you're not strong. You're either learning, or you're just something you're not good at and no interest in getting good at that. So again, self-awareness is critical. And for me personally, I believe in a very highly collaborative leadership style. Like, I don't believe the person at the top always knows best. I mean, I know there's going to be one person who needs to make the decision, but the way to get to that decision, hopefully, is with a lot of input from people smarter than that person, or that more specialized, if you will. And so having facilitation skills, listening skills, like knowing how to hear everyone's voice at the right time, it's not easy. It's not always easy, but it's very important as a leader. And so I would say really skills that women excel at, which is listening with attent care, and like caring about people is another really important one for me. Like, I think great leaders care about people. I mean, of course they care about business objectives, but it's not like people are just soldiers that are going to march to their orders. They're like people, they bring their whole selves, hopefully, and they can grow both as first people, but also as professionals. And that's something I enjoy when I'm leading teams. I really enjoy helping people grow in as many areas as they can.
Great. Thanks for your answer. We have someone from the public answering to your how do you imagine the future in 50-year questions, saying in 50 years we will likely see advanced AI integrated into everyday life, humans living on other planets, personalized healthcare norms, full renewable energy use, and societal transformations due to the technological advancements. So this is a really optimistic a really optimistic approach to see the future, right? I really like this one. I don't know if you share the thoughts with me. We have another
I'm
question.
very optimistic.
Yeah. We have another question coming from the public. Nadia is asking, other than the Artificial Intelligence Act for the European Union, do you think it's possible to make global legislation or regulation across the world?
You know, I've been thinking about that a lot. And I mean, I'm sure not as much as people that's what they do, but for a living. But I have been thinking clearly it can, I mean, obviously states need to worry about this and companies and states should worry about it, but it's bigger than any of us, than any country, right? Than any company. And so to me, the answer should be there should be global legislations around this. It shouldn't be the case that one country, I mean, it just happened with Japan. Japan is like, oh, you can use whatever data you want. And I mean, good for them, I guess, but I don't know. It's a little tricky, right? Because what if that data is your data and you're not in Japan and you don't agree? I think maybe there is rules around how the data needs to be from Japan or Japanese people. I'm not actually, I haven't read the full thing. So, but I think countries need to kind of coordinate. And I think that this is going to be like this very optimistic person was sharing. It could be a very amazing future for all of us. I agree. I believe that. And I want to be part of that, create that future. But I think there's also this very huge risk that everything goes south very quickly if we don't coordinate across countries, if we sort of just choose to compete and see who gets somewhere faster as opposed to safer and responsibly together. And so to me, I think there is this African proverb that says, if you want to travel fast, go alone. If you want to travel far, go together. I feel like this really applies here where we want to go far. We don't want the world to end in like 10 years, but having gotten there first, like what does that even mean? So like, let's just make sure we're having this longer term, sustainable, thoughtful approach to developing these technologies. And to me, that requires global coordination. Like the answer to exactly what that looks like, who needs to be that is very tricky. There is some orgs that are best positioned than others. Maybe we need a new organization to do this. I think it's something that we really should be thinking about, and hopefully people much better than me that know a lot about policy and like they can hopefully get the right group of people together that have the best interest of like society as a whole and not just specific, again, politics, religion, countries. Like that's just divisions that are not going to serve us in this moment. Like we need to really elevate ourselves and be like, we're all humans, we're all in this earth for now, we're not traveling to Mars yet, so how are we going to make this work for everyone in a fair and just way?
Yeah, interesting insights, so for sure. I have another question coming from the public as well. So with your extensive experiences, with your current experience, like running up a company, do you think and do you feel that companies, institutions, and final users are really thinking about this responsible use of the in artificial AI, or this is starting now, or people just don't think about it, just don't care? How do you see that in your day to day?
Yes. So I'm not going to say everybody is going to fit into what I'm going to say, but I'm very encouraged when I'm having conversations with a lot of customers and potential users right now for my company. We ask them these sorts of questions, like what are they thinking about? And I have to tell you, and also maybe it's because of the type of customers we talk to, but there is a very almost not maybe 100%, but like a very high percentage, they care about doing this in a way that's safe, doing this in a way that's not going to jeopardize their private data, their users' private data. So they're definitely, data privacy is top of mind. which, as you know, it's not a given with LLMs, and so it's something to think about and to be thoughtful about. But then I think more generally, they're aware of biases, they're aware of things that we need to be careful. So I think honestly, the public at large has gotten that message that there are risks associated with it, and so they're not just, a lot of people are diving head in, but a lot of people are being very thoughtful, and like if something is holding them back is the fact that they want to do it well, not just fast. They do want to do it fast, but they also want to do it well, and that is great for us because that's our thesis is like you shouldn't be able to give up doing it right to do it fast. You should do it right and fast. And so that's literally the whole point of us creating this company, is trying to help companies achieve that goal.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for your answer. I think that the public it's really amused with all that information that you are providing to us. I have one more question. Well, I have several ones, but let's go to the next one, right? What motivated you to make this transition from working with established huge tech giants companies to founding your own startup? Which was your main motivation to do so?
Yeah, this is a very hard question because I always felt like I wanted to start a company, and people kept asking me, when are you going to do your own company? And my answer was always like, well, whenever I have a great idea, I'll do my own company. Like, I just never thought like, oh, doing a company is something you just decide to do and then you figure out what you're going to do it. Like, I never thought that order was a good order to approach this problem. It turns out it's a very common thing. It's like, first you have to decide, this is the route I'm interested in. It's like very risky. You sort of trade off a lot of things, work-life balance. You don't really have an income. So you have to be like willing to have this lifestyle and to risk and to just make it an adventure for yourself and people around you, like almost before you decide what idea. Because the idea, not that it doesn't matter, clearly it matters a lot. But if you have the idea, but you're not willing to go down this very risky path, then it won't happen. And so it's interesting because I've been thinking all my life, I've been thinking it backwards. And now that I had this opportunity to take a step back and think about, okay, what's next for me? I didn't get there in a straight line. I get there with like lots of circles. But the thing that triggered maybe more clearly to me that this was what I needed to do now was a good friend of mine actually starting his own company. And we've worked together in the past in several companies. So actually the startup I joined, he was founded that startup. So he reached out because he was founding his own startup again. And he's like, he wanted me to lead design and product for him. And it was super exciting. And I got very excited about the whole like creative startup process again. But then I really realized after, like, I almost said yes, actually. And then after sleeping on it, I was like, wait, but what I'm really excited about is like building my own company. And I actually checked with him. I said, hey, do you want co-founders? He's like, no, thanks. I'm going to be solo this time. I already done the co-founder thing. It didn't work so well, maybe potentially. So no. And I'm like, okay, well, as much as I'd love to work with you and I love the idea and the product and the space, I kind of feel like I owe it to myself to give myself the opportunity to do this. And why did I choose it? Ultimately, because I want to learn. I feel like it's a very big learning kind of experience for me. And I love exponential learning. I've been in some exponential learning curves along my life. And I was missing that, having had like similar jobs for the past, I want to say 5 years. And so I wanted something very, very different where I would have to be on my toes, learning a lot. And my personality, I think, is also conducive to just doing a lot of different things. And I don't want to do the same thing over and over again. That is not something that would work well for me. So just having to be creative, having to imagine things that didn't exist before, and challenging sort of blockers. Like, I actually enjoy that sort of stuff. It can sound a bit masochistic, but I really love a good challenge. And so this is something that I feel like it fits me. And maybe that's why people kept asking me, like, when are you going to do it? And I never really thought, okay, I should just do it. So I think that's how it all came to be.
That's a nice question, because that makes me think about how important your surroundings are, right? So if you are in contact with people who's feeding other people, who's inspiring other people, who's sharing with other people, how important it is to be supported, how important it is to be in a dynamic environment, as you said, right? How important it is to be like close to people that gives you confidence to do whatever you want to do, or to push you to do so, or to give you, you know, like a kind of a role model. So it's what we are trying to do today, right? With the International FemHack and so on. So I really love this message, because for me and for the FemHack community, it's really key, right? So whenever you have something to share, share it. Whenever you feel you can like embrace other people, just do it. And that makes that the community grows and everyone learns, and we make a great space with a larger community. So I really like this message that you are throwing to us. So thanks for that. I have another question from the public. So Luna is asking, the more we ask the AI for diversity in our prompts, are we training them to give more diverse answers in the future?
Yeah, thank you for asking this question. Absolutely. I mean, I would say the potential is an absolute yes. It doesn't mean that it always happens necessarily, because that will depend on the system architecture and how that model, like what's the wrap around the model. But reinforcement learning through human feedback is how you would do that. So it would take, you know, any sort of modification of the prompts. It would take what if you give thumbs up or thumbs down to the answer. In some cases that the interface allows you to do that. And it will take all of those as signal back into the model, and it will use it to improve the model and basically reinforce the messages you want to give it. So absolutely. And in fact, what I'm doing right now is I'm kind of accelerating that process myself, like doing that through prompt engineering for a base model that we're building, where I'm telling the model, I'm giving some very controversial prompts, and I'm saying, this is not what I want to see, this is what I want to see. And so that's I mean, I'm basically just doing it myself in the cases that the model cannot provide it, because again, I'm trying to help companies that they might not have the time or the ability to do that.
Great, great. Really interesting question and really interesting answer. I have more. What advice would you give to those just starting out in the field of AI and machine learning, or those considering transitioning into this field? Do you have any advice for that brave people?
Yeah, I mean, I think follow your heart. And so there's always a question when people are asking me, like, should I become a manager? Should I go into tech? For me, the answer is like another question. It's like, why do you want to do that? And even if you don't answer me today, obviously, because I cannot hear you, I think you need to know the answer for yourself. Why are you trying to get into tech, or why are you trying to get into management? Is it like purely money-driven decision, which is, I'm not judging, and I'm not saying that's not a good reason. Actually, for being a manager, it's not a good reason. For being in tech, I think is a fine reason, as long as you also enjoy it and find that it's not gonna be something that you hate, obviously. But it's really the why that's going to help you understand why you're getting into it in the first place, and whether you get what you want or what you need out of it. So write it down somewhere and come back to it a year after. But in terms of how to transition, we as in like the tech community need as much diversity as we can possibly get for all areas. So, you know, from data creation to data labeling to algorithms to evaluation to user experience to product management. Like right now, not right now, it's a little better, but like honestly, in the past, it's always been, you know, white men making decisions and creating this technology, and this is what led us to where we are today. So we really need to be diversifying the teams that are working on creating AI, the teams that are thinking about designing the AI, planning the AI. And so I think that hopefully that encourages you or inspires you to join, because never think that you don't belong. So I actually used to have a t-shirt that says like, you belong in tech, and you meaning anyone, right? If you want to be in tech, then you should be in tech. So don't let anyone tell you otherwise, because being in tech doesn't mean necessarily being a hacker and programming. Of course, it can mean that, and that's a really fun thing to do. But it could mean a lot of other things. It could mean help design the system. It could mean work on strategy or on the business side of like what products actually are worth building. there is a lot of components like business analytics, data analytics. There's a million parts of being in technology. And so being in technology, hopefully people know this, but it's just not this like one type of work. It's like a very rich ecosystem of jobs and roles. And so I am pretty sure there is a job there for you, but I think you understanding what you like, what are your strengths, where you thrive, then that should guide you like where you should work and what type of job you should do. And I always find it best when you find a role that you can add value from day one in at least one or two dimensions. And then there is at least one or two dimensions where you're planning on growing and planning on learning, because then it makes it both that you can be effective at your job, but that you're not going to be bored and you're going to be challenged and excited and you're going to be learning, which to me, again, like the whole reason I'm even here doing the founding thing is because I want to learn. I know I don't know everything I need to know, but that's part of the fun, that I want to figure it out. So as long as you have that attitude and there is room for you to grow in whatever role you take, then it hopefully should be a fun ride.
Yeah, you are more than right, and I really feel represent on your words, because when you were saying why do you want to work on that, or why do you want to do that, I remember myself just 1 year ago. I am an aerospace engineer, and I was working for the aerospace industry, and I decided to jump into the tech industry, and I was really scared because at some point I thought, really, I will fit there. And finally I found the position and I found the gap in which I fit, and now I am really happy. As you said, on the tech industry there are many different roles you can fit in. I'm not a developer, so I'm not coding, right? But I'm dealing with developers, with product owners, with product managers, and it's really, I mean, fulfilling. And the most important thing for me that you said, it's you want to learn. I mean, you need to learn, and you have to be constantly learning, right? And this is the most amazing challenge I think that this industry has, right? Because it's changing so fast and so many different things, right? So I really felt represented with your words. Sorry. So really nice answer. I have another question coming from the public that it's really, I think, focused on the FemHack intention, right? The question says, as a woman in a traditionally male-dominated field, have you faced any specific challenge? If yes, how you have navigated them?
I would say if you found a woman who says no to this question, I would really love to talk to her because I know where she's worked and with whom.
Me too.
I don't think, yeah, I think it's almost like a rhetorical question. Like the answer is obviously yes. It is a male-dominated field. I mean, even obviously technology for sure, but like let alone like a leader in technology, because leadership are always going to be positions that are very highly coveted and like mostly men and potentially white men. So it's almost like a double a double yes. And just realize that also it could be very lonely, because you don't have, back to what you were saying before, Noelia, there aren't a ton of role models. There's some, luckily, it's better than maybe when I was starting, to be honest. But it's still not where it should be. And so there aren't like a ton of role models. For me, you know, how you kind of, so the answer is clearly, how did I deal with it? Well, I am an optimist, and I'm someone who just I'm not easily defeated. And so when someone is maybe trying to block me, either deliberately or not, or even without knowing, which is almost more common, and if they're doing things that are kind of not helping and they're potentially hurting, which is, again, microaggressions, right? Every day, every meeting, it's like people like that report to you, people that you report to. I mean, it comes from all angles, and it can be exhausting. So first is take care of yourself. Really, like, just take the time to fill your tank, as they say in the US. Like, make sure you're not depleted of energy, because you need, it's a bit of a fight, unfortunately, and so you need that energy to be able to do the fight. And I'm not meaning in like an aggressive and violent way, but you will receive microaggressions constantly, sometimes even bigger than microaggressions. And so you have to stand your ground. You have to be ready for it. You need to have a thick skin, for sure. If you don't have a thick skin, maybe try something else. You know, definitely, I would say maybe it's the exception to the rule. Is like, if you're going to be easily affected by these, then consider something more friendly in that regard. But if you're okay, you have a thick skin and you're up for a challenge, then it's a challenge that's worth fighting for, because we need more people like the FemHack community. We need more women, we need more people of color, we need more people that are just not white men in general. And nothing wrong with them, but like we just need more of not that. And so I would say be ready for the fact that it's not always going to be open arms welcoming, but it's okay. I don't think it has to be. I think you just need to be clear and sure of the value that you bring, not let people kind of downplay your role. So having allies is very important. Having people who have your back, hopefully in the same room, so that when someone is kind of stealing an idea that you just mentioned that nobody paid attention to, they can see like, oh, that's such an interesting idea. Ari just mentioned that like 5 minutes ago. Like, I think there's a lot of strategies to be a good ally for your peers and to have your peers be a good ally to you. And so finding your tribe, supporting each other, it's kind of how you survive. And it's I think it's definitely worth it. It's the good news is you have a smaller community, which means it's also more warm and you get to kind of know people in a different way. And so I'm always again trying to look at the bright side. As long as you don't let this defeat you, you can absolutely succeed. You can absolutely thrive. And what I do believe is that women that get to the top of tech fields and as leaders, like they have had to fight double as hard, prove themselves triple as hard. Like that's just a common story, like across the board. When I talk to peers, like and colleagues, like everybody's sort of the same. So it's not just one company or one country. It's like it's just really pervasive, which is unfortunate. But let's fight the good fight. Like it's not like our women ancestors haven't been doing that for decades. So let's just keep it up.
Sure. I totally agree with you. And once again, I really felt represented by your words. So thanks for that. I would like to end, Ari, with your presentation with a comment. This is no question, but this is a comment coming from someone from the public that says, that means we need more African women in AI and machine learning. This is my new really cool. So I think that the message has been well interpreted. So that's all. Thank you very much for your participation into the International FemHack. As we said at the beginning and as we were saying now, among us, this is the aim, this is the objective, to create a community, right? To provide with different role models. Definitely you are one of them. So thank you for your participation. It has been a pleasure having you here today. And I hope to see you really soon, your best with the company that you are running. We are more than sure that it will be fulfilling and it will be really successful. So thank you, Ariadna, once again for being part of the International FemHack.
Thanks, Noelia, and thanks everyone for the great questions. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Bye, Ariadna. Okay, so this is the end of the first speaker of today, which has been Ariadna Fon. And now in a few minutes, 20 minutes more or less, we will be having with us our second speaker of this afternoon, which is Katia. So we will be back in 15 minutes more or less, so stay tuned and see you now.